Did you immediately know what his voice was going to sound like, or did you go through a bit of a process?
Yeah, I mean, because Anduin's voice is not altogether that much different than mine, but I mean, I hear him as somebody who grew up in a royal setting. So he's, at least for me, he's going to have very, very put together speech. Everything is going to be, he's going to sound educated because he was by the best.
Yeah.
I almost like, and yeah, I mean, that he was younger when I started voicing him, so obviously my voice was going to be younger. And I always saw him as very optimistic, which in my head kind of always um, led to him having a more mellifluous sound, like having a musicality to his voice. Um, and so that basically was where
So
I put
that was
him.
actually that was on purpose. The sort of musicality, the sort of rhythmic flow of Anduin's voice. You did that on purpose.
Because everything with him is going to be measured. That's probably how he was taught. To speak
Wow.
as if he's public,
Yeah.
to speak as a king, to speak
Mhm.
with that air of dignity. And so I mean, he's going to break out of it from time to time because he's still a kid, but it's something that I think would always be at the backbone of how he speaks.
Another question that people wanted me to ask you, and a few people in chat have been spamming it as well. Can you do, and I'll probably blow this up a bit more, how many characters, because I listened to the audiobook version of, I believe you did Before the Storm. You
Yes.
narrated Before the Storm. And you did a couple of voices in there. How many characters of World of Warcraft can you voice?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know because in that one, I mean, I didn't really have the luxury of hearing like previous performances because in an audiobook, it's just totally different. Like you get the book, you really don't have a lot of time to prepare. And when I did that audiobook, I had literally had surgery to fix my shoulder 2 days before. So I was completely on painkillers throughout most of that. You could even hear the first 10 chapters, I think. My voice is scratchier than it was in the later chapters because I was intubated and still like rough from the intubation. But yeah, so I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of time to prepare. I cannot do a dwarvish accent to save my life, so like that's something that I'm practicing because I would like to.
I thought you did a pretty good one.
Oh man, that's the one that when I first went in there to read it, I was like, okay, now I don't know how to do this accent, and they're like, oh, there'll be somebody there that can help you, and there wasn't. It was, but everything else, like a lot of them were really just maybe hearing one line, like if you could find like one line of Terralion and then just kind of riff on that for a while, but. I didn't really have the luxury of hearing a lot of existing performances. So a lot of those were just like, if I heard one in-game line, and then just using that as a jumping off point to do a bunch of other ones. I think I heard Gallywix, and I did my best Gallywix, but a lot
You
of
did a
them were
pretty
just.
good Gallywix.
Oh, thanks. I really goblins a lot. So I mean, it's a lot of it they were just voices that were thought up right there on the spot, like for Fowl and for Will and or Gen was kind of I don't sound exactly like Gen, but it was kind of more my version of what Gen sounds like.
Yeah.
But yeah, with audiobooks, you don't have a lot of time. I mean, you're literally just reading through the book. You don't have a lot of time to make choices and you get the book like a week in advance, so you're expected to come in there having read the book. But I mean, it's really more stream of consciousness in terms of recording. Like you go in there and you're literally just reading the book, so you can break into whatever voice. And what they do the first time you do a voice for the book, character, they'll kind of notate that spot in the recording. So later on in the book, if that character comes back, you can hear what you did for the first line, and kind of in that vein. Because otherwise, I mean, I don't know how many characters I had to do a somewhat semi-unique voice for, 30, 35, and I mean, they can literally all sound like the same person if you don't refer back to what you did.
I mean, it's one of the interesting things about the books in both cases, Shadows Rising and Before the Storm, is the different voices. in a lot of audiobooks, at least older ones, I haven't listened to a lot of audiobooks recently, at least. I prefer to just read them. But it's usually just, one voice, and they don't really change too much from voice to voice. So is that something that's very specific to Blizzard? They want you to try and change it?
That was the first audiobook I've ever done.
Okay.
So, I mean, maybe it was just like, I don't know, like, that's just how I read books. Like, when I read to my kids, I do voices. Like,
well, it is your job. It's your livelihood. So
reading the book, I was like, well, I gotta make him sound like this, or I gotta make her sound like this, or nobody really told me necessarily to do that. It's just that seemed natural to do. Obviously, when you're having parts in the book where you're playing two characters having an argument, like that gets a little difficult. Like, there was one scene, the scene with Gen and Turalyon and Alonsis Fowl and Anduin, where they're all in the same room and having it out.
Oh, wow.
Like, that was actually one of my favorite scenes in the book, where Fowl basically makes Gen confront all of his prejudices and brings up his son. Gen just freaks the hell out, and in pain, anger, but completely just enraged with pain. Like that was a tough scene. I mean, I had to keep four voices going at least, and have each one be at different emotional states and still arguing and still kind of keeping a pace going.
And you are, sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to ask you, you're actually sort of entering that emotional state as you're reading. You are more because you're acting it than just reading it.
Yeah, no, you're not stopping to reset and say, okay, now he says this. No, you're reading this as if you're just reading it.
Yeah.
You're like, you might have to go to level 100 anger and rage for Gen, and then immediately come back down to like a real calm and soothing Fowl trying to comfort him, and then go to just a completely offended Turalyon, kind of like a 60, and then come back down to Fowl, and then like there's so many levels to have to keep track of, and that gets difficult. It gets difficult.
I can imagine, because I mean, as you just said, you are physically acting the book, so to speak. You're not just reading it. You are actually acting it. You are putting that effort into it. I have some people who asked in chat, can you do Arthas? Can you do the voice of Arthas?
Without hearing an Arthas reference, because again, like some of this just live in my head all the time. But yeah, I mean, if I hear something.